Live. Okay, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm excited about this conversation we're about to have. I know people are being notified and people will be coming on. And I will start setting up this conversation. Have a wonderful guest tonight, gentleman named Jeff Burningham. And I got your book, Jeff, in the mail. I had not heard of your work before. And I saw this book, last book written by a human, Becoming Wise in the Age of AI. So I thought, started just looking to it. And of course, it became very interesting. And I'm very glad to be talking about it. But I also think everybody, it's particularly interesting that Jeff and I are having this conversation today. Because as we know, the Pope has just released an encyclical, which is a huge deal, about the issue of AI, and particularly the moral context within which we need to see it. He said something I've said, I think a lot of people have said it, which is that we need to regulate this the way you regulate nuclear power. This has the power to do very good things. I think the bottom line on that is just that it's here, whether regardless what you think about it. But I think many people are deeply concerned because it also has the power, I mean, to end civilization as we know it. Let's just get right to it. I think everybody realizes that. Jeff Burningham's book is so interesting because we all know, Jeff, we're living in this time of a real dichotomy. We get, the way I've been saying it is a tsunami's coming. It's either going to be a great light or great dark. The days of neutrality are over. And so this is a time of great potential impending peril. But it's also, and this is what you stress so much in the book, what I think the book is about, correct me if I'm wrong, is it's also potential for profound light. But it's not just what
Absolutely.
we do differently, it's who we have to become, right? Is that what you'd say?
Absolutely. I mean, AI, if you think about it in one way, and I make the argument in the last book written by a human, is simply a cosmic mirror to humanity, a reflection of us. Because, Marianne, think of what it does. It just takes all of recorded data, human history, and then how we interact with it. And then it provides a reflection back to us. And as you know, a reflection can be a powerful thing. It shows our biases, it shows our inadequacies. It can also look at our patterns of dysfunction. Hopefully, we can see those more clearly, and then we can choose if we want to change. I think it's time for a change. And I think that in AI, you could say the obstacle becomes the way here.
Yeah, I read
And
that
it's
book by
through,
Holiday.
yeah,
Um,
through
let me
this reflection, the way becomes more clear, I think, for humanity.
I'm gonna push back on that a little in a few minutes because it's nice that
Yeah.
you think that, I can think that, everybody listening can think that, but what really matters at a certain point is, does Sam Altman think that? Does Elon Musk does Peter Thiel think
Yeah.
that? Does Alex Karp? You're a very sophisticated man, and you know that. But we'll
Yes.
get to that because I think that your setup here is so important. First of all, I want people to understand, guys, Jeff Burningham. Yeah, Jeff, your book is one of talk about a man of the moment, right? So you grow up, you raise a family within this very traditional Mormon church, right? You're from Utah, Mormon, married, 4 kids. At one point, a bishop in the church goes all the way from that to investor, tech guy, multi-billion-dollar companies. Then you add psilocybin, then you add ayahuasca, then you add you ran for governor. It's like is interesting. And then you say, I think it's time for me to tell the world how we're going to survive AI. But your book, in essence, is a profound story about a spiritual journey, and very definitely the spiritual journey that I think speaks to this moment. So I'd love to hear you first tell people about your life, your journey, which is a spiritual journey, and then we're going to have a little conversation about AI because I think that I'm not the only person who would listen to you. And as I said, all that's very nice, but you're talking Peter Thiel and et cetera. So first of all, tell us a little bit about.
Well, Peter Thiel and Sam Altman and all those guys, they're part of us, right, Marianne? So, like, we're in this together. But you're absolutely right. Let me tell you a little bit of I grew up in a very conservative Christian home, Mormon, Latter day Saint. I've been a bishop and a leader in the church in various regards. I served a mission for 2 years for the church, which is very common. I'm an entrepreneur. So I've started large companies here in Utah. and invested in over 200 technology startups here in the state. Grew very quickly. Like you said, I'm a father of four. I'm actually a grandfather of one now. I have an 18-month-old grandson. Happens fast here in Utah. Yes,
Tell me about
touches
that.
my
That's
heart.
great. Yeah,
It's beautiful.
beautiful.
But the pace that I was keeping was not, I could not keep the pace in these startups. I had become, like I think a lot of us, a human doing. And we're not human doings, we're human beings. And this is one of the interesting things that we get to grapple with, as that we as humanity get to grapple with in the age of AI. As a machine becomes better and better at doing so much of what we have done, so much of how we've defined ourselves is by our doing, what are we left with? And I would argue that we're left with our essence, our being.
You
We
know,
are human beings after all. Yes.
I think that that conversation has already been mainstreamed. Probably every person listening heard Wayne Dyer say, "We're not a doing, we're human being." I think the way you put it in your book was great. You said, "The smarter the machine gets, the wiser we must get." So,
Yes.
go from the baseline of everybody gets the basics. Everybody, but the way you talk about it in your book, there's really you talk about the periods of disruption, transformation. Get right into it because the book gets right into it. So assume that we know the base. People know that this is a time of spiritual growth and spiritual evolution. People know we need to embody it. People know that we need to raise our frequency now, that that's really our only hope, actually. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd like to hear some of your own experiences, some of the things that you felt that you saw in psilocybin, your ayahuasca, where you think psychedelics come in. So just know that the whole we're not a doing, we're a being, like people get that. But what do we do in all seriousness about the Sam Altman, Alex Karp, the very real things that the Pope was discussing? People are concerned about massive job disruption, massive data surveillance, massive manipulation, and what could be obviously the enslavement of the human race. Now, you just said something very interesting, and I think that I'm probably speaking for everyone here, saying I get you conceptually because you said something very important. Alex Karp is part of us. Sam Altman is part of us. Peter Thiel is
Mhm.
part of us. Get in there, because you do get in there in the book, and talk to us about how you see the evolutionary elevation, right, of human frequency. Because what I heard you say is if we're more ethical, all that AI will do is mirror us. But once again, it's in the hands of people who might not wish to mirror the better angels of our nature. So at that point, you get where I'm coming from, throwing it over to you.
Yeah. I mean, life is a heroic journey for each of us. So here we are individually on our own heroic journey. And you mentioned that I ran for governor in the state of Utah in 2020. I lost during the pandemic. And that was the little platform that I had built for myself just disintegrated. And I was free falling into nothing. I talk about in the book kind of climbing my little mountain of success. We all do this in different forms. And when I got to the top of my mountain, I say, there's nothing but a cold, howling wind, just void and more void on top of that. So, Marianne, you may or may not like this answer, but what we have to do instead of looking outside of ourselves, I think the place to begin is to look inside of ourselves. So, I wrote the last book written by a human to be a conversation starter. I mean, this book's been out for almost a year now. It was ahead of its time in a lot of ways. And this is a conversation that needs to be had, obviously, in boardrooms and government halls and even in religious institutions, but especially around the dinner table. So, where we begin is with what we can control. So, it's how we interact with the digital world that we're living in, and then what we model for our children. So, the real work that we have to do here is to look into the mirror and to decide where we want to go. Will we allow AI to be continue to be pointed at what I call in the book the old game of division, greed, and hate? Or will we use it as a tool for personal transformation? And eventually, the last section of the book is institutional evolution. And I think that's what you're talking about here and what you're getting at. Institutions are made up of individuals. We have power within institutions. If we don't, then what are any of us to do? I think that we do hold power. I think that we can speak to the powers that be. I think you've made a career and a life of doing that. It doesn't mean that our voices will be heard. It really, Marianne Williamson's voice, Jeff Burningham's voice, whoever else we want to list, we could list a lot of names. It's not really up to us, let's say, how much our voices travel. We get to share what we feel like we should share after our own internal journey. And then it's up to us to obviously act in wisdom and decide where we feel like we should play, whether that's politics, inside politics, outside of politics, et cetera, in terms of the transformation of humanity and the evolution of our institutions. That is coming via AI, either through, it will probably come, unfortunately, through a lot of pain. It seems like humans need pain in order to look in the mirror and to do the hard internal work, both individually and collectively, that I believe is at the heart of existence. I believe this is at the heart of, why we're here and what we are. It's time for us to do that work in earnest. And so that starts individually. And certainly, I talk in the book about a political movement. I call it the human political movement. That's an option, right? It's a direction that we could go where we then transform our political system potentially. We look at different ideas. Our tribes maybe saved us when we were on the savannah, trying to stay alive from lions or whatever the case may be. But now our tribes are destroying us. So I say that we get to sacrifice the specialness. And I grew up in some quote unquote special tribes. The Mormon church is a special tribe. Our political parties are a special tribe. But what's much more fundamental, I think, than our tribes is the unity and the oneness that exists amongst us. So when we can point out, the deficiencies in our political leaders and the CEOs, et cetera. Um, but no matter our differences, Marianne, whenever we are sitting across from another human being, we are on sacred ground because we always share more in common than we don't. And we've forgotten that in our day. We have made enemies out of people that don't see things the way that we see them. So this is work that needs to be done in the human heart. And when I'm talking about the human heart, I'm talking about individual human hearts and our collective human spirit and heart. And I think that AI is here to either accelerate that or, yeah, to accelerate a path that will not be good for any of our children or grandchildren.
Well, first of all, don't get me wrong, I agree with every word in your book. And when you said you might not like this answer, please don't misunderstand anything I said. I totally agree with you. The change comes being has to come before doing. I saw some graffiti once. It said, "Doing is being." Kierkegaard, "Being is doing." Schopenhauer, "Doobie doobie doo." Sinatra. I thought it was so funny. Um, I think any of us with a spiritual perspective understand that everything in the world is a reflection of us. Um, and this is a time of deep evolutionary possibility. I think people do realize that. I think that, one of the things that does make your story fascinating is you've been a very successful white man in America. Um, I think that there are, and you said in the book, and you said something a couple minutes ago, you got to the top of that mountain, and I knew exactly which mountain you were talking about because I'd read the book, meaning very successful financially in business, etc. And you said I got there and there was nothing there. I think that there are people, and enough people in America, and I assume in the West, or maybe in the world at this point. This evolutionary trend is not coming from any one particular geographical place, who realize, much as you describe in the book, and you describe so eloquently, that the old game is over, as you say, and that what does it mean to even get to the top of that mountain? Because what is that mountain? And actually are eager, as you so are, to take the deep internal knowledge and wisdom, and everybody, the book really is filled with it. I mean, Jeff's spiritual journey all over the world is fascinating, and the fact that you wanted to put that into a political run, um, I understand that too. I get that. I get that all that
Yeah.
is our collective behavior, and it's got to be a collective movement now, etc. It's interesting to me, Jeff. What do you think about this? Nature. One of the things as a student of A Course in Miracles, it talks, well, the way the Course puts it, God has an answer to every problem the moment the problem occurs. The notion is that the universe works almost like a GPS. And if you take a wrong route, as humanity obviously has, that the GPS automatically recalibrates. And the way I put it all together for myself, I wonder what you think about this. If you live in the place that you're talking about, and this podcast would be an example, this conversation you and I are having.
Mhm.
If you are living to the best of your ability from the place we're talking about, you will automatically find yourself in collaboration and cooperation with people with whom there's an exponential chance to increase whatever resources we can bring to the table. But it's interesting because you've been such a master of the old game. Tell me if this is correct. That in the new game, we're not figuring it out. We are making it's that Eastern rather than Western approach, going into an empty space and really letting spirit move through us, just being so present. To me, one of the most beautiful parts of your book that was really moving was when you were in a swimming pool with your little 1-year-old little girl. And she said, "Daddy, you're here?" And I'm a mom, and I get it. That's why I think being a grandparent is redemptive, to whatever extent.
Yes.
Get it right. "Sure, honey, let's go
Yeah.
to the pool. Love to be in that
Uh,
pool with you." That somehow the deeper we go, the more radically we go into the vertical, the more possibility there is for horizontal effect and influence.
Absolutely. And this is why this is both an internal game that then shines into the external. So, to get more specific, Marianne, here are some simple questions for you, for your audience. How present were you with a loved one the last time they came to you and you were on your phone?
Mhm,
Very simple question. The most powerful ideas are often the most simple and therefore the most neglected. And it's a returning to these simple ideas that are hard to do. Our nervous systems were not built to have constant dinging and to have constant alerts and notification. This is not how we were meant to live. So we wonder why we're in the most prosperous society ever. Obviously, income inequality is a massive issue, but we're in the most prosperous society. You could argue the most inclusive, although we still have a long way to go. Yet we feel desperate fear. We feel emptiness. We feel alone in the world. So, what is not working here? Something is not working. And so, it's in these simple acts, being present with our children. One of the simple things, obviously, that was transformative for me in the last decade has been meditation. Just sitting and doing nothing for 10 minutes. I know that will be very simple to your audience, but a vast 99% of people in the world do not do that. They feel like they can't do that. I understand they have pressing concerns of the day, but we need to return to stillness, to the present moment. You mentioned psychedelics a couple times. I do believe that psychedelics can be a tool when used wisely. And we see, I think, government officials and religious organizations, et cetera, kind of coming around to this wise use let's say, of psychedelics. So we aren't without tools. In fact, Marianne, we have the very tool to help us get there. And guess what it is? It's the human body that you and I reside in right now. AI, and one way to think about AI is intelligence in search of a body, a form of intelligence in search of a body. We have bodies. We are embodied, both individually and collectively. And we need to return to the wisdom of the body. And the way that we do that in 2026 is to return to stillness and peace within the body. And this is a simple idea that's the most powerful and therefore the most neglected. I mean, there just aren't secret trick answers. I'm not going to give you a PowerPoint or bullet 1, 2, 3. Here's how we go. That's what, CEOs give. That's what our political officials give. And excuse me, most of it's just bullshit gibberish that's repeated. These are simple ideas that have been talked about by every master for thousands of years. And we get to choose whether we return to that wisdom as a collective or not. And really, I think that our, dare I say, like existence, certainly existence as it has been, is in the balance here. Maybe not today, but it's coming in the decades to come. We are deciding what we become and where we go. And it's certainly a consequential time. And as you said, the call of the last book written by a human is that as our machines become more and more intelligent, we have to become more wise. And this is the wisdom that we're talking about
Mhm.
today.
Well, the Dalai Lama said that in order to save the world, we must have a plan, but no plan will work unless we meditate. Because meditation literally opens up more avenues of synapses. I mean, we have more access to the powers of our own consciousness when we meditate because, um, as you mentioned earlier, humanity lived for thousands and thousands of years without this constant technological assault. It is so unnatural to our being, and the most natural things have been peripheralized. And I think people are realizing the terrible price, horrible price that we've paid. Um, Now, the second thing for me is that you just said over the next few decades. And I know I don't need to tell you or anyone here, this thing's coming at us so fast. This
Yeah.
stuff is coming so fast. It's like I don't think we do have decades. It's something happening now, actually. And I do agree with your book. Don't get me wrong. I agree with every word of it. I think that the idea of our preparing our own nervous system because the body cannot show up the way we need it to be if we don't. Through meditation, through prayer, through forgiveness, through atonement, through doing whether you look at these ideas spiritually, religiously, secularly, it doesn't matter. The brain research, whether you're talking meditation, prayer, quantum physics, it all comes down to some of the same stuff. Did you really love that person in front of you and hold the space of graciousness for the maximal opportunity for themselves as well as for themselves as well as you? I'm not kidding, when I say that I think our greatest hope is that a book such as yours would land on Sam Altman's desk, would land on Alex Karp's desk, and I assume that, you're not dumb. I'm sure you've done, doing whatever else you can,
I'm doing what I
would
can. Yeah.
land on, Peter Thiel, etcetera. Now, what do you think? I think I'd like to talk a little bit more if it's okay with you, and I do recommend everyone in terms um, of Jeff's spiritual journey. It's so profound and so beautiful. His relationship with his wife, his being in India. It's really beautiful. I mean, if this kind of in a autobiography of a yogi type of way. I mean, if the book didn't have anything to do with AI, it would still be very powerful in terms of your story that so many of us can recognize. Um, what do you have any particular thoughts about the Pope weighing in on this moral dimension of AI? Because I think that he doesn't, and I think I'm more like the Pope on this. He's deeply concerned. Um, what are your thoughts about that? Have you read the encyclical? You have
Yeah.
ideas
I,
about what the Pope is
yeah. I think
saying?
the encyclical came out yesterday, right? So I haven't been able to read it, but I did get
Mhm.
some high level. I think what the Pope understands that we understand is that fear seldom plays a positive role in our lives. And so you're right. It's probably not decades. I'm probably being too generous and kind here, but the truth is, I don't know. I don't try to write as a prophet in my book, and I'm not sitting in front of you here trying to necessarily be a prophet. No, I believe that we are writing our own destiny as it goes. And so, like you said, as we meditate, we open additional synapses. We open additional opportunities for growth within all of humankind. I mean, maybe this is all just a meditation. And so, if that is the case, what is possible? Well, what's
What was the mind
possible
he was
is
talking? I get that. You
well,
really went there. The whole thing is
what is possible is what we believe
no,
is
no,
possible
I
and what we're
understand.
willing to do it. And let me say one other thing, Marianne, real quick, because you very beautifully 5 or so minutes ago kind of laid out what happens when someone comes with an alignment of their being. But let me add one thing that I think you left out, and you
Mhm.
also understand what you can do to solve these problems. You understand who, let's say, Jeff Burningham, the character is, and what I can bring to the table to hopefully help. And by the way, everyone has unique gifts to bring to help. But it's only when we can sit in our stillness, understand ourselves, understand our own trauma and wounding, come to some peace about that, that we have a clearer picture of, oh, this is the role I can play. I'm the CEO in a company, or I work at a company. I can do this. I'm a mom or a dad. I can do this. I've had political aspirations in my heart and soul. Why is that? And should I actually dive in? It's only when we come from that place of courage that we can play the roles that we are meant to play. It's absolutely critical because this is a group game. I mean, we're doing it together. It's not, there's not one individual that can solve this problem
No, no,
and bring
no,
us to the place.
no. No, the zeitgeist at this moment isn't the one savior, two saviors, and I don't even think it's about the role we play. It's the state of being that we inhabit in any given moment. I think that you make that clear in the book, and I think we all get that. You know, I'm seeing Azim Khamisa, my old friend. I haven't seen your name in a long time. I see Phyllis Marks. There are people who are listening to us right now who I think it's an interesting moment, Jeff, because you said at the beginning of this conversation, this is about getting the conversation going. It's about you said sitting around the table having the conversation. And that's what I see you and me doing right now with people who might not be speaking, but there are a lot of people nodding their heads because we get this. And we're really just talking about expanding the resonant field, excuse me, of possibility that is built. You know, the Course in Miracles says an idea grows stronger when it is shared. And I don't even think it's, I mean, yes, there are people listening to us, obviously yourself. I've tried in my way. All of us, you know, we've lived long enough, we've done certain things. But one of the notions that I'm fascinated by is it doesn't matter whether you're writing a book, whether you're running for political office, whether you are a healer, whether you're a scientist, or you're a teacher, it's not the form of our doing that matters, it's the content of the energy that we are bringing forth. And all of us are used for the particular, uh, as you would say, role we could play, but gifts we can give. It's an old Christian concept, the gifts of the Holy Spirit, that when you surrender your life and say, "Use me," my favorite gospel song, you'll just find yourself in any situation, any moment, like you said, did you really give attention to that person in front of you? And I love, you know, and I've seen it in my life and I've seen it in the culture. We undertend to our children, to our own children, and to the children around us. Um, if we go deep into that place of really being there for children and caring for one another, it's like a trim tab. Something's going to shift. It's going to be like a critical mass, and that's what happens.
Absolutely.
In right.
Say that again, Marianne. Sorry.
That's what happens in evolution. There is a mutation.
There is. Yeah. There should be, I'm encouraging all pattern breakers that are listening now to step out of the
Talk more. Yeah, you say that in the book. You have some line about if if you're not somebody breaking things apart, you're not worth you have some great line in the book about that. Please talk more about the pattern breakers and being the disruptor and all of that. Say more about that because it's a really
Well,
interesting part of the
Well, for so long, again, in our tribal groups, if you broke a pattern, it was hazardous to your health. I mean, completely. And so we have this built-in DNA towards safety. But I encourage people to read the book and then to lean into their unique gifts in order to break the pattern in their personal lives and in our society. We need to celebrate the pattern breakers. I think that we need to elevate the pattern breakers. We need to create safe places for these people that are willing to step out of the pattern that we've been given because we've had a false idea that this pattern has been keeping us safe. It's not keeping us safe and it will
right.
not keep us safe any longer. And so until we have pattern breakers or more of them that are willing to step up, to step out, and to follow their unique gifts into pattern breaking, we're in a dangerous spot. And so we need anomalies right now, in my opinion, in politics, in business. We need people that are willing to step up and to, dare I say, lay their lives down for their friends and to
You know,
choose.
I was
Yeah.
gonna ask you about that word anomaly and how you use it in the book. Um, we all have the romantic notion of the disruptor, but the system is very wily. And when it really gets down to it, a lot of young people are like, "Oh, disruption." But actually, if you truly stand as a pattern breaker and you truly stand as a disruptor and the anomaly, as you know from your run for governor, I think politics is a particular example of the resistance that comes at you from the status quo. I think that we have to encourage each other right now to have the courage that it takes to be a real pattern breaker. And I think also everybody who's listening right now to apply that to your own life, where you sort of being called upon to give birth to that next phase of things. I find a lot of people, Jeff, don't know what it is, but can feel something rising
Mhm.
up. Can feel like I don't know what's next, but I feel like something's next, right? And we feel it's different
Yes.
and we don't know what it is.
This is why it's important that we get still. And I know that's the craziest
Yeah.
thing or the most paradoxical thing to say in
It's not at all.
2026, but we need to get still within ourselves. And then we need to, if there are others, Marianne, I'll take yourself. If there are others that are further along in the journey, let's elevate those voices. Let's do the things that we can to support the voices that we believe in that are breaking patterns that are going against institutional dogma that has been in place for as long as we can remember because that momentum matters. And I think that supporting, I'm saying candidates, but supporting leaders that align with us or that are trying to break that pattern, it also helps us find our own voice. So you and I aren't going to be here forever. Really, I wrote the book too for the rising generation. This world becomes more and more their world than your and mine, Marianne. Like every day, it becomes a little bit more of their world. They've grown up in a world where they don't even understand that the digital world isn't the world. The internet isn't the world. The world is nature, and we're losing touch with nature, for instance. The world, you could say, is our bodies inside our bodies, and we're losing touch with that. So AI can take over, let's say, in a nefarious way only when we become disconnected from ourselves and the reality of nature.
Okay, so let's talk
And
about that. You were just talking about supporting people who are the pattern breakers. You ran for office, I ran for office, and one of the things that I learned, and that is really quite terrifying, is that if the system doesn't want you there, they use the technology to manipulate
yeah,
people into seeing who they wanna see or whatever. So, you have to even be careful. You these days, even when something comes across your feed, I saw somebody say today something that I've said myself, well, is that AI or is that not AI? I don't even know. Is that really that person talking? You can't, I mean, it's happening so quickly. And that takes me to something that you just alluded to that I've thought a lot of in terms of World War II. During World War II, the main somebody working in the French underground, somebody working in the, in the underground trying to fight the Nazis were not using the phone. They had no computers, but they were having things like this. Somebody would be at a restaurant and they would be sitting there for an hour talking. Somebody's on the other side of at the other side of the restaurant, they don't even notice them. But the person on the other side of the restaurant has been given the information somehow that one of those people in that conversation is part of the underground. And whether when they get up they leave their napkin to the right or they leave their napkin to the left, that person on the other side of the room knew that that was the signal to do the whatever the next thing was. In other words, people must have had such profound capacity for intuition. Like we know about people who live up in the Himalayas and some of those places like literally the top of the world, and they will know when visitors are coming. I think that I was with my friend Frances one day, and we were uh, going from where I was giving a talk to this nice restaurant bar thing that we would often go to afterwards. We've all both driven it like a gazillion times, and she actually put it into her GPS how to get there. I said, Frances, we've been there a million times. So I think part of it is our disconnecting. It's like kids not learning how to write cursive. That's terrible. Kids aren't even learning how to write. We have to somehow disconnect enough because our intuitive muscles will wither away, our muscles for compassion. Look at these little kids who are raised with screens and it's like that's not real life. So I think we have to
Yeah.
develop some of the internal powers that are not technological at all if we want to prevail over the worst uses of it.
The greatest technology that has been ever created is housed right within
And the human
us,
brain.
right within our body. And so you're talking about, to me, discernment, and it's understanding signal over the noise. Our lives are so noisy, way too noisy, and we're enabling that noise. And when we enable that noise, we become less clear and less discerning, and you could say less intuitive. So if we can quiet the noise, I think you would agree that this all begins with presence. Like if we can be present, we can then be discerning. And only when we're discerning can we have clarity on next steps. Period.
Well, exactly, and that's what the subtitle of the book is, Becoming Wise. The smarter the technology is, the wiser we have to be. I made a mistake this morning, like a dumb mistake, just a dumb mistake with an email I wrote, and my first thought was, "You hadn't meditated yet. You hadn't meditated. Not be on your computer before you've meditated. You know better than that." It was just a dumb choice I made. It had to do with some administrative stuff because we're all like, you don't have impulse control when you're not practicing, as you would say, the presence. I want to do something, guys, and I see all these people on here, but I want to see if anybody has any particular comments or questions that you would like for Jeff or for me. I see a lot of people here, but anybody have any? Okay, the data centers are destroying communities and ecosystems. Teal and his friends don't care about the environment, the impact these centers have on people. Jeff, this is becoming a huge issue. I saw Alexandria uh, Ocasio Cortez on television the other day, showing people the dirty drinking water that no one would drink near one of these data centers. Do you have any thoughts about any of that and how it's so amazing communities?
Well, absolutely. I mean, what I would say, what I'd like to point back to in this great example, here's an example to get involved because these are local issue. Data centers come to local communities, and it's local communities that largely decide how these occur and what happens. So get involved. This is a very like specific example of how someone could lean into discernment and clarity and wisdom in a local way that will affect the macro, right? So I don't want a data center to come into my backyard or to my community. How do I get involved? How do I mobilize other people in order to cause change that will ripple around? So rather than comment on like specific data centers happening in Utah or Arizona or wherever the case may be, um, there's a way for you to get quiet, to come to stillness inside, and to come up with a plan of action of what you can do to make a difference for your local community. And yeah,
I don't wanna sound like the cynic here, but you just talked like it was 1995. The truth of the matter is these city councils are being bought off. You're in Utah, and I know you know what Kevin O'Leary is doing up in Utah. I know you know
hmm
what he's doing with these young girls, these young women are trying to fight him. So I think that it's not just learn what you can do to get involved. It's neither Jeff nor I are dumb enough to think it would be easy. We understand that whole city councils have been bought off by these guys. We know in that wonderful book by Jacob Silverman called Gilded Rage, they're buying out. I mean, look at that woman in some state who refused to sell her ranch for $26 million. What a heroic thing. But
yeah.
this is the thing, guys. I also saw one where people showed up and voted out the entire city council because the city council had been bought off. So when Jeff just said, "Get involved," Jeff, this is interesting to me for you. Um, you're in Utah. You're
Yeah.
a master of the universe power guy in Utah. And, hello, Kevin Leary coming into Utah data center.
I've
Look at
now
that
done
little
mushrooms. I've
across
now done
smiling you.
mushrooms though, Marianne. My
Come here.
power in Utah is sinking as I get into
Well, did
psychedelics
you
and
have
as
to
I
go, what did you
go
run as a
against
Democrat
the
or Republican?
institution and the powers that be, But yeah, yeah.
But it's gonna take everybody's gotta do our part, I know you know that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, and I'd love to ask you,
everybody
Marianne. I
they
mean,
don't.
I'm a first-time author. I'm a venture capitalist, as you know, like that's my background is building big businesses. What advice would you have for me? Speak to me, like where would you go if we're like what other answers do you have? I'm not disagreeing with anything you said. All you have to do is run for political office and we both done it at high levels, especially you, but we both have to
Mhm.
understand how daunting the task is at hand, but give me better answers. I'd love to hear them
Well,
from
I
you.
think you've already well, I think you've given us the answer, and I think you're doing it. You're right here, right now. The only time there is this moment, and it brings me joy because I know, we heal one aha at a time. My father once said to me, Jeff, he said, because he was a lawyer, and he used to say, and this was some of the best career advice I ever got. He said, always speak to the smartest person on the jury. I think there's been so much dumbing down of American culture, but I would always go into my lectures assuming smart people are in the audience. So I'm assuming very smart people are listening to us right now. That's why when you started with a quote from a certain, we're not doing, we're being, I'm like, yeah, yeah, we all heard that from Wayne Dyer. You know what I'm saying? So
I
I
haven't
know
heard
that
that
there,
from Wayne Dyer, just so you know, but I
okay,
get you. I feel you. Yeah, I feel
but I was like,
yeah,
let's
I get
dig in because
you're
we got
saying
the basics
step up.
right.
Okay, yeah,
I get
cool. I get it.
so
Yeah.
my point is, we're doing it right now. We're having the conversation, not so much that we are revealing anything new, as that now we are gathering in groups like this to take in more deeply the things which by now we all already know. So there might be somebody, this is my hope, there's somebody listening right now, they're going to hear about a data center, they're gonna see what they can do, but they're gonna remember that we also said don't expect it to necessarily be easy because nobody's kidding ourselves here. They're bringing in billions of dollars to crush any opposition, but a lot of it is mutual cheerleading right now.
I feel that. Can I share two thoughts? Number one, I would ask your listeners to just consider that whether we like it or not, our leaders, sorry, are a reflection of us in some ways. So this isn't responsibility to abdicate. This is responsibility to hold, and to hopefully hold with as much ease, love, and grace as possible while we transform and evolve, because we need that to happen. The second thing I would say is that, like you said, if I could just share a little bit of a story, and I'm going to close my eyes here. I start my book in Varanasi, India, on the Ganges River. And again, we've gone through a little bit of my background. I'm a privileged white male that grew up in the Western United States. I grew up in Washington State, actually, Spokane. I grew up in a very orthodox religion, a very conservative religion. Um, I had my parents stayed together, although it wasn't a very happy home in a lot of regards. They were together. I had so much advantage, let's say, in my life. I grew up a Christian, a quote unquote capitalist. I built large companies, and I believe that capitalism is often the very best of a bunch of flawed systems. It's done a lot of good for a lot of people. But when I went to the Ganges, as you recall, I stepped out of the vehicle. It was a crush of people, animals, sights, smells. I stepped out with Sally, and I immediately felt alive. We made our way to the banks of the river for the nightly festival. And I looked upon a scene that, as a Westerner and Christian, was very foreign to me. To the left was one of the largest and most well-known crematoriums in the world. So there were bodies with just a white sheet on them that were set ablaze. And within a couple hours, we sat there for hours. It felt sacred, it felt holy, it felt reverent. These ashes from these bodies were swept into the river through right in front of us. There were people being quote unquote reborn. They were baptizing themselves through the ashes of death in the Ganges River, locals and pilgrims, shouts of ecstasy in the air. And then to our right, about 50 yards down the river, there were people doing the laundry, the most mundane task of the day. So, what I what was hitting me at that time, and what I've reflected on so much after, is that our lives, every present moment, the macro, the micro, is a never ending cycle of life, death, and rebirth. How do we want to reborn? I'm using this in this time. How do we want to live through this time? I talk about AI as a crucible for humanity. It's a crucible that we must go through together. And I think that we get to write how we live through the moments together, and then how we are quote unquote reborn through this crucible. That is the work that we are engaged in. And while it is daunting, while it is heartbreaking on a massive scale, I just want to acknowledge the heartbreak that is in the room, that is in us. It's also glorious and ecstatic. And what else would we want to be working on now? This is our work. This is what we've been called to do. And we're deciding how this rebirth occurs as we are living now. There's no doubt that transformation is coming to the world. It's up to us to decide whether that comes with as much ease, love, and grace or equanimity as possible, or if we fight tooth and nail, if we divide each other, if we hate each other, if we go to war, if we continue to kill each other, if we retrench in our tribes, this is up to us. This is the story of existence in a lot of ways. And this is our moment. It's the message of our moment that as our machines become more intelligent, they are kicking this into hyper gear, the speed, the pace that we've spoken about. It's up to us it's paradoxical. We need to slow down in this moment and make sure that we are living and that we are reborn, even if we die, that we do so with as much ease, love, and grace as possible. That's like my plea to humanity. That's my plea in the book. And I try to paint a picture. I start painting a picture. I'm a first time author. I'm working on a second book right now. But I start to paint a picture of how we could maybe do this. This is the bull case of how humans can exist with AI and how we can come out better for it. Now, my second book gets more practical, but this was just the overall kind of introduction to Jeff Burningham, to who I am, to some of my thoughts and ideas, to the experiences I've had, and yeah, that is a picture that will never leave me, and it's the picture that I think all of us as humanity can lean into and decide how we handle.
Well, I think that the beauty of the book also, and I wanna say again, is this your spiritual journey. And, everything you just said was so eloquent, and the book is very eloquent in your talking about such things as your trip to India and the impact that that had upon you and upon your wife. I think that many people in talking about Donald Trump, for instance, we realize he's a symptom, not a cause. We have spent decades not tending to the most important things. And I think that part of what modernity, what is now demonstrated is the myth of neutrality. If there's no such thing as neutral, either you are extending love into the world or you're creating a void where the worst of the worst can get in. And I also think, not lost, I think, on people that one of the reasons the Sam Altmans, the Peter Thiels, the Elon Musk, et cetera, have the kind of power that they have, that they can use uh, with these tools is because they have been able to accumulate so many billions of dollars. And how we have you talk about capitalism. I think there are people listening, there, I'm sure, all over the spectrum. But whether people feel it's inherently corrupt or feel that they can go with a conscious capitalist model, such as you mentioned, I think we'd all agree it's been so morally hollowed out. Certainly in our country, lack of moral center. Even Adam Smith, in articulating um, the free market capitalist paradigm, he said it cannot exist outside an ethical center. And even Milton Friedman, who Elon Musk is so enamored by, he himself said none of this free market fundamentalism cannot work without a UBI. And when you think of all the jobs that have already started to be, I heard Van Jones talking the other day, and he was putting it eloquently, the shame, the humiliation, so that so many people are going to feel who thought, I got a degree, I'm a working professional. Nope, those jobs aren't necessary anymore. It's cataclysmic, internally as well as externally. And I agree with you, the only antidote has to do with an internal power. Um, and then I think everyone, that this to me is the bottom line here that I think we should leave each other with. Um, we have to trust. The Course in Miracles says love restores reason and not the other way around. People use the phrase divine intelligence. And you said earlier, there's no technology more brilliant than the human body. There's no technology more brilliant than the human brain. And I think the spirit does work through the subconscious mind. Neuroscientists discovering this connection between the brain and the heart. They used to think the brain was the intelligence center of the body. They now know it's this highway, brain and heart. And a civilization as well as a body that has enough brain but not enough heart begins to crumble. So when you talk about how it's part of us, I think this is where the principle of atonement comes in, as we atone for the mistakes. And I think that that's when you talk about getting quiet, I know for me, part of getting quiet is so that you take a deep look in the mirror. How did we do this? Because we did do this.
We
We did
did.
do this.
And we
We
can
did this. So
continue to do more of it, or we can try to back it off a little bit.
right. And atone and keep our hearts open. And that does mean praying for Trump, Altman, Karp, Thiel, Elon, etc.
Yes, it does,
Um,
Marianne, without that look on your face, doing it with a smile, even though it's hard to do. Sorry, but and
when
that's
Jesus,
the work that we're
it's like,
doing.
yeah, it's like in the Bible when he said about Lazarus, he is not dead, he's only sleeping. That something is sleeping in people, but the goodness, our better angels don't die. They go to sleep and we can awaken one another.
Yeah,
Well,
and
put up
that's the hope that I get. Could I just say, Marianne, and I was in South
please.
Africa a couple of weeks ago, actually with Boyd Vardy walking, tracking lions on foot. But before I went with him, I did a Mandela um, circuit. And let's just remember that Nelson Mandela, his story, et cetera, occurred. I'm just going to use 20 years ago. Here's what gives me hope. I'm trying to end us on hope. We have come so far in a short amount of time. I know there is so much further to go. I am not discounting any of that, but I'm just reminding you, Marianne, I'm reminding us we have come a long ways. And I think that we, and especially the rising generation, our children and grandchildren, were built for this. This is what they are built for. And if we can be resonant signals to them, leaders to them, to point them in the right direction, to give them freedom to break patterns, it's not the end of the world. A psychedelic journey or whatever the case might be is not the end of the world. You have to understand, in my faith context, that is the end of the world for my family, my faith. This is not the case. We need these pattern breakers. They will find solutions, and I think that we can do this together. That's my hope and my belief. I know you do as well. But I just want to remind people that we have come a long ways, just even in our lifetimes. I'm 49 years old, and the world is vastly different than it was when I was growing up. And so we can continue to change. That's up to us. It's within our power. And the only way out is through. And we have to go through this together. There's going to be a lot of disinformation, a lot of job loss. How do we handle that pain and trauma? Let's handle it with to end it. Let's handle it with love and with unity. We're in this together. We can't leave people behind. We need to lead. We need to bring people along with us.
You know, you were talking early on about how we need to come out of our silos. And one of the silos we have to come out of is this: which generation are you from? This age thing has gotten ridiculous and it's really diminished us. Any belief in separation diminishes us. The soul has no age. And I
Mhm.
think that this is an intergenerational moment. I think the younger you are, the more you know certain things, but the older you are, the more you know certain other things. Um, I
Absolutely.
understand I understand that, for young people, I understand the trauma of living through so much of this, but I understand as older people that we've had to eat so much of that trauma and that wounding. And I think yes, on one hand, I think about my grandchildren all the time. That's why I get so upset with some of this stuff because, oh my God, what will it be for these kids? But at the same time, this is not a moment to forego the wisdom of the elders because you were talking about being 49. I'm 73. And I thought at 50, okay, I'm 50. No, 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 no. There's this whole thing of aging and saging. So I don't think anybody, um, I think we need to
We need
listen.
each other.
Yeah, none of
We need
this like
each other.
that age group or that age group or what generation. I think it's really diminished us actually. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like you said, separation is not, let's
That's
just
the
say
problem.
separation is not truth. Let's
That's
just
right,
leave it
because
at
the
that.
spirit on the level of spirit, there is
Separate.
no separation, and then on that thing,
Yeah.
even if we die, quote unquote, "die," but I think the ultimate realization is we don't even die when we die, so
No.
Jasper, you're great.
Separation is an illusion, right? Yeah.
Put up the book so everybody can see it.
Oh, yeah. The last book written by a human, Becoming Wise in the Age of AI. And I'm not hard to find on social media. Obviously, I have major mixed feelings about social media, but I'm trying to meet people where they're at. And it's not hard to find me. JeffBurningham.com, my book. You can listen to it on Audible,
And that's the
whatever.
thing, you don't have to buy it on Amazon. Hi, okay, Jeff Birmingham, thank you so much, and thank you everybody for
Marianne, it's
joining us and spread the word, and
great
I
to
hope
be with
those
you.
aha moments for everybody, and, let's all go deep, and let's all be real and do some beautiful things for the world. God bless you, honey. Wonderful to have met you, Jeff.
Good to meet you, Marianne.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.